Welcome to the Science of Branding, a podcast about brands and how they work. We're going to discuss everything brand, design, technology, and what it takes to be successful. We're going to have discussions with industry leaders, case studies, head-to-head brand comparison, a whole lot of stuff coming your way. This is Thomas Belacen.
And I'm Sho Rust, and we're both innovation designers, entrepreneurs, and professors. We have also helped shape designs at a dozen Fortune 100 firms. But most importantly, we have failed more times than we can remember. On this podcast, we'll hear personal stories from some of the world's top innovators and entrepreneurs. You will gain insights on how to create a powerful brand, thrive in a business environment, and turn your creative ideas into tangible reality. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show.
Let's get to it. Well, I mean, we're going to interview you first. Why? Because this is our first show, and it's also your birthday at the same time.
Man.
So it seems like a great day for us to get
getting
into
old.
Getting old.
This is a great year, I think.
My
I'm
God.
super excited, man.
So
We
much
got
going
many great
on.
things.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, birthday, and you've been designing almost half your life now. Think about this. Reflect back on this.
I mean, we've been playing with
life.
Legos since we
Yeah,
were
I
kids,
guess most kids have been designing.
That's true. Like when I first started getting into design, probably when I was like 12 or something like that, creating a t-shirt company.
All right, tell me about Sho, 12-year-old Sho, living in Japan at the time, if I believe.
Oh, I just moved to the U.S.
You just moved back to the U.S.
So I was like a little bit of a loner, which is like a good place for a creative to be, to like be productive. And then I was also like, I was seeing a lot of like the Steve Jobs videos, the iPod and stuff like that was coming out.
That was the time where he was doing the big presentations.
Yeah, but it was still really early. Like it was still like early click wheel and stuff like that. People weren't into it that much. Like all my friends were like, "Why are you getting that?"
Okay.
The Zoom was out. There was like
Zoom.
a big battle and stuff like that. But essentially, like, I really wanted a Mac, but those things were really, really expensive, right? So how do you make money as a kid? You make some t-shirts and you start selling them.
You make some t-shirts. Was that like your first step into entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
12-year-old Sho making t-shirts?
Oh, for sure. And then like, I honestly this is also a time where like Threadless and stuff like that, where like you had those like online design competitions for like t-shirts and people were making cash for designs and stuff like that. So I was trying some of that stuff out. Eventually created a series of designs, took it to the Japanese festival, man. And it sold really well. It was really cool. It was a good experience. Like I kind of
gives you the bug a little bit. You were like, oh my God.
Yeah,
this is
you
awesome.
create a little bit of value.
I can design.
Yeah.
I can basically make art and sell it for money at a young age, and like being able to do something with it.
And people are like super excited about it too. Like you kind of.
What kind of t-shirts were you making?
Essentially I found like a niche within like Japanese festivals. And then, so I teamed up with the Japanese Women's Society.
Did you know what a niche was when you were 12-year-old?
A niche.
Probably not, right?
Yeah.
A niche market? Like you were like, oh.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't really know. I wonder what I was thinking.
You had some kind of instinct that was like, I need to make this.
I think I had to like give it up to my dad too. Like he doesn't necessarily do t-shirt designs and stuff like that, but I was exposed to the Japanese festival world.
He's a creative and entrepreneur, which rubs
And then
off.
I think I might be wrong about this, but like when he was like 30 years old or something like that, around my age, I think he did create like a bunch of designs for the same festival.
Interesting.
Yeah, I should someone should fact check me on that one. But essentially, like, so those kind of parallels and me kind of following that path and making a little bit of extra cash. But I got that computer.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so you
more.
get the computer. Did that open up the world? So like, how do you go from, selling t-shirts and is that what made you fall in love with like design? Did you understand what design was at the time? What was that like first transition to the real design world?
For sure. It was like an exciting time where like new apps were coming out left and right. Like Steve Jobs was like starting to announce like the iPhone 1 and stuff like that. And you're just starting to see like, it really felt like magic back then to a certain degree. Yeah. So I knew I wanted to be a part of it. I just wasn't sure like how. And then at the time, like I didn't really differentiate like art and design too though.
Yeah.
Like it was all kind of like, making like really beautiful, cool things.
Even today, I don't think most people can differentiate what art and design are, except for designers and artists. But we'll get into that in this show, I think.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. And then even today, like I kind of think of our software as like art. I don't know. But,
yeah, I guess anything you make with your hands and with your effort and with your sweat and tears is some kind of art. It's an extension of who you are, and so in some way, it's art. So design. Okay, so let's keep going with this idea of like designs and brands. So you created your first brand basically when you were 12, and then you evolved into becoming an award-winning brand designers and worked with a lot of huge companies and consultancies out there. So what happened after you came back from the U.S. at that age? We both ended up attending the same alma matter in California. So what was that transition like? What made you want to go as a graphic designer or brand designer?
Oh, well, first, before Art Center, I was at Interlochen, which is kind of like a boarding school. It is a boarding school that focuses on art, essentially. But I got 5 or 6 hours of art a day. Wow. So I was like really creating some really good stuff.
At a high school age?
Yeah, at high school age. So it's like a huge advantage. I really appreciate how blessed I am. But I got a full ride there, and I just really took full advantage of it. It was awesome. And
you were surrounded by like musicians, and not just like artists as we know, and like painters and people that draw and stuff. You were surrounded by musicians, and so did you find a lot of like interesting overlaps and intersects with all these creatives' energy, like in one place?
The energy is the same, right? It's almost like it's easier to get inspired from musicians and stuff like that, because you're like, I guess I don't know if you necessarily look at other artists and stuff like that as like competitive, but you know some of the secrets that they're playing. Yeah. Like when you hear like a symphony or the orchestra play or something like that, it's like, oh wow, like it really does feel like magic. You have no clue like how they're all in sync or how they're coordinating so well. Like what exactly is the conductor doing? Like you don't know, but you know it's beautiful and
there's
it's amazing.
There's a process to the madness, right? Because if you think about it, the difference, I mean, there's not much difference between music and design and art, right? Like everybody has a process, a very iterative process, and some of the same almost design principles apply across music, across a lot of different functions. So it's pretty interesting to be inspired by people with different backgrounds.
Yeah, it's that work ethic, man. Like that's the most inspiring thing for me, is to see like those other students just like grinding it out. Yeah. You know, even at Art Center too. Like I think what kind of gravitated me towards Art Center was at first like, I went to a lot of the other schools and I was not inspired just because like the work didn't have that same kind of grit or like impact that I wanted it to have. But when I saw Art Center and saw how like tangible the work was, okay, I was like, okay, this is somewhere.
Explore on that a little bit. What do you mean by tangible compared to other places? Because I think we've talked about this before, you and I, but like the benefit of Art Center compared to some other design schools or art schools in general.
For sure. Like I think in many ways, like after creating art, like you really realize, oh, I want to have some sort of impact. I want to create something and for there to be some sort of like output, like input, output that you can play with. Like the idea of like systems and stuff like that was really interesting for me.
Yeah, they're really good at making commercial designers. Because Art Center, for those of you that don't know, Art Center College of Design in California.
We also teach there, so if you need it.
Very close to the Hollywood industry, to the entertainment industry. So they pump a lot of talent directly into these industries. And so therefore, they create very commercial designers and very commercial artists, I would say. Whereas other design schools sometimes focus a lot on the concept and that side of the art, and sometimes doesn't necessarily have the value in the commercial world that people are looking for in designers and things like that. So you studied graphic design and brand design at Art Center.
I got some like illustration and stuff like that as well, and like even cinematography and photography. But I would say that like my big emphasis was always like business building and brand building.
Business and brand building. And so that led you at graduation. So we were in Art Center for what? So we were classmates and roommates. We worked on some projects together. We got to know each other quite deeply at Art Center.
And night owls that just crank through the night. Exactly. Night warriors.
And I know that we had a lot of different interesting things going on throughout Art Center and after Art Center. What was your choice after Art Center? So you're presented, you come out of a design school like this, you have a giant grad show. For those of you, the grad show is like basically at the end, you show your portfolio to industry experts that walk in the hallways and just basically grill you on your work. Or want to hire you. And that's a really good benefit of going to these design schools, is all the connections you get to make and all people that walk through the hallways to see your work. And so you were offered a few different jobs and a few different directions to take your career. One of them was being a full-time entrepreneur, starting your own company. The other one was potentially going to Google and working for one of the biggest corporations in the world. And then the other one was the consulting route.
For sure.
With BCG Digital Ventures and things like that. So Yeah, three very different options that would allow you to be a different creative in different ways, right?
For sure.
Why did you pick the path you picked, and what path was that?
That was such a hard decision for me.
I bet.
Because like with the startup and different things like that, it wasn't like it was like really high risk. Like the startup was already getting legs. Like we had investment. I would have had cash in the door.
The startup was, tell us about this startup that you started.
It was
While at Art Center, by the way.
Yeah. While I was at Art Center, helped. I was a co-founder, not the main founder, but the co-founder of Rareform. And it was a really, really cool brand. We took billboards and turned them into bags, surfboard bags, backpacks. Learned a lot.
So like recycling billboards and
recycling.
Okay.
I mean, like, essentially the reason why I didn't go with it was because it was, at the end of the day, even though it was a do-good company and we were upcycling, and then the bags were pretty cool. You can check it out right now at rareform.com. But it was still soft goods.
Yeah.
And like I felt like there was like that magic that I felt kind of growing up and seeing technology wasn't necessarily in like backpacks and stuff like that.
I see.
There was too much like emphasis on, keeping the margin low. Because at the end of the day, like
I know that world very well.
The amount of labor that goes into the backpack is quite a bit. So just to keep margins low, like material costs, the deal. Yeah. I couldn't do it. And then
it didn't allow you to be a design technologist, as you would like to call it. Or
exactly.
Right? Okay.
Like I wanted to build, and like I had this kind of like angst in me, like kind of coming from startup life and also freelancing so much. So I want to move fast.
Yeah.
And then that's where BCG Digital Ventures, which is kind of like a skunkworks division of DV, was interesting to me. Because for them, they went from idea to like incubation to commercialization, taking that idea to market in like 6 months. It was wild.
So big corporation, big companies, or even small companies would come to you guys and be like, hey, we need to tackle this market.
Yeah.
Tell us who we need to be.
Right? Oh, yeah. Or even so, they would be like, hey, we're in this is our industry, right? We know we're dominating it. Like, we feel good right now. We're the alpha. But we know that we're just as vulnerable, And so essentially, instead of having a startup come out of somewhere that's like VC backed and owned by like another company that wants to take them out, essentially what they come to DV and say, hey, can you come up with some ideas to basically disrupt ourselves? Like let's come up with an idea together to create a new entity that we co-own with you, that you also have some equity in, that disrupts our own core model. So if we do get disrupted in the future, it's by a venture that we own and we have some layer of control over. So like it's kind of like, it's really cool. It's also like scary for like entrepreneurs of the future, because you're competing with not just like startup type mindset, but also startups with like the corporate resources and backing, which is
tell us about that. So I'm guessing we're talking about multi-million-dollar projects to like reinvent and reinvigorate brands and
huge
like tackle markets fast, right? Because we're talking about 6-month project. That means you need to pump a lot of money to make fast impact.
Like,
so what were some of the things you were building there?
Oh man, like there's certain areas. It's kind of like a skunkworks like secret division. So there's some things I had to keep in the vault. But hardware goods, software goods for the biggest companies that you can imagine.
Like you'd have to launch websites and new brand identities and like everything.
Entire companies. So essentially, like oftentimes I included like finding a new office space, like hiring people, like building out a real startup essentially within that time. I mean, the huge benefit too is that like we're in a startup environment right now, and then there's like an extra layer of stress because like,
Well, is it this podcast? I think that's the extra layer of stress.
I mean, this podcast is fun. Like, this is like the easy stuff, right?
It is.
But oftentimes, like, we're having to talk about stuff that goes beyond necessarily like our expertise, where we have to learn about, we have to look at financial graphs and budgets. And
good thing we have some really smart people around here to help us with this. But yes.
Essentially, they don't have to worry about that as much, right? A lot of the distribution channels are already set up. Like they have, if you need legal help, BCG has some of the best legal help in the world. So it's a really good way of like getting some rounds at the bat without any risk. So in that way, like I'm super, super grateful for like all the hard work and sleepless nights at DV.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I'm sure there's some crazy hours. We hear about the nightmares of the consulting world.
Oh,
I'm
for sure.
that, like, to build,
they're all true.
To build a whole new brand and products and everything in 6 months. Either you guys had the craziest systems that were like automating themselves and like really repeating a lot of different things, or you had like hundreds of people working overnight to be able to pull some of these up.
I mean, honestly, like a lot of times, like you say, like, yeah, we have this amazing method and like this incredible process. But at the end of the day, they are really good at like pushing people, like to just really do things and solve problems that most people don't really feel like they have the energy or the incentives to do. Most
pressure makes diamonds, you know, like isn't that what they say? And I feel like that's a lot of the design world. I mean, I bounce around from industry to industry as well in that design world. And a lot of the highly competitive industries were usually the ones that were pushing the fastest and the most, right? Like that competition really unlocks things in creative sometimes. But I do agree that collaboration also does. So
for sure.
I think we're working in a startup now where collaboration is key, right? There's no competition except for ourselves right now to be able to build this thing. And so we need to help each other and like lift each other. And so
collaboration process, you can scale with that. Like it's sustainable, you know, like I can push and push and push and you can push and push and push, but eventually,
How's that collaboration process at like a consulting firm? Like because you're working with these big companies, right? So you're working with internal teams, external teams, like you guys are trying to build communications across these different channels. Like what goes down in this world?
Oh man. So these are some of the, we're going to like touch base on a few of the pain points that essentially kind of led us to, you know, the software we're building today. But essentially it's tough. It's so tough. Like not only do you have like the DV team, right? But you're onboarding people into like this new concept of innovation, essentially. And then you have the client team kind of embedded in with you, right? And they have like their own incentives. And then you have
sometimes their own innovation cycles and
stuff,
right? So they want to work a certain way.
Whole thing, And then they have their own process and everything. You have to kind of meld those all together. Like the stakeholders from their side, stakeholders from your side, it gets really messy really quickly. You get insane amount of feedback. And on top of that, a lot of these companies have, like they're not the only people reviewing it. They have like consultants consulting on the consultants.
So like just in case, like some backup safety stuff.
Yeah, exactly. We have like another consultant that is watching how this consultancy group is working. It's a crazy mess. And essentially like within all that chaos, you hope to come up with something like a cohesive business that makes sense. And then the sad truth is that oftentimes, especially at the very beginning, like even at DV, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but they failed a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the new thing of entrepreneurship where failing is okay. So it's okay to say
so
that, right?
like, I think it's cool. Like, please don't say me. But essentially, like, they failed a lot. And then essentially, and through those failures, they figured out processes. They were able to kind of create and kind of nurture leaders within like the innovation realm, right? Like this is how we run the process. And then there's also part two where like a bit of accountability and like governance around it, where they're like really quick to like, you know,
shut things down
if things were going out.
Hey, when you invest a lot of money, you gotta pull the cord really fast if things go wrong.
But at the end of the day, like there's still chaos. And I think that like that's something that, you know, we often hear from like our customers too, even some of the best ones in the world. Like, you know, I worked at some other agencies and like that in the past, and there's always like a layer of chaos, essentially because there isn't a system established. And then oftentimes you're kind of reinventing the process again from scratch.
Because new project, you restart from scratch even.
Because like when you're in the project itself, you don't have time to create like a scalable framework. Like you're not thinking about like, hey, how would this process and like this methodology not just apply to this current customer and my current problem right now, which is freaking me out emotionally, but all the other ones I want to do in like long term. If I don't want to just do like 3 brands this year, but I want to be able to deliver on like 15, 20 brands as a brand builder this year.
It's like a factory of brand making at this point.
How do you do that?
It's like the successful agencies, like some of the bigger ones, I don't think even tackle 10 projects a year. They're like very focused on multi-million-dollar projects, and they tackle a few at the same time that are really big. But being able to produce 15 to 20 brands a year and crank them at that pace and that quality with all the touch points that you need to hit, and like including all the research and things. And I know BCG has an army of people for sure that like really tackles a lot of different grounds. Because they hired a lot of people from Art Center that were doing either research or UX.
For sure,
UI, and then they have tons of strategists and things. So
you'd be surprised, man. So like even within there though, like essentially a team is still like essentially like 10 people per project, per venture, you know? And then I think like kind of like a soccer team, if you put more players on there, at a certain point, it's just going to be like
gets crazy.
Too many people on the field. You can't even get the ball around. Even like you kind of losing a disadvantage, you know.
And what did you see in like so you talked about there's something you touched on. So this idea of like there's these processes in place, but you realize a lot of it you have to start from scratch. And this is when I think for you that created some opportunities for innovation and. So there's different types of innovation that you can go out there with products. And one of them is if you're an expert in a field, you notice something that's going wrong and you try to do something about it. So how were you equipped to be able to like tackle some of these solutions?
Yeah. So one of the unique things I have like that code background, right? And then design. And then because I was in the startup world, I had some of the business background. So I was able to connect a lot of the dots and realize that like, holy crap, like 90% of what we do is like the same.
Yeah.
Like you can automate a lot of this stuff. Like, okay, you might not need this module, and you might need this module for this client, but you can create a systematic series of modules, which is very common actually in engineering. Like design systems are very common, but it doesn't really apply that well into brand platforms. They're starting to like, the discussion is starting to happen with like design tokens and stuff like that, but it's still very shallow, and it's the way that they're thinking about it is for like these large corporate teams with like 600 people, like huge product teams.
Is the biggest issue like consistency, basically keeping brand consistency across multiple channels, across all these things?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're building a brand, let's say you rebuild a brand, you create all these logos, all these assets, and then you hand them off to your client and you're like, yo, you guys now got to execute on all of these.
And
good
luck.
Sure they're pushing across your hundreds of touch points that you have out there. Potential thousands of touch points that we've talked about from some clients. And the tripling every year, right? Like these touch points, like new devices, new platforms. Like if you think you have a problem today, wait a year and you got 3x the problem. And so to just deal with that, you know, we created a system essentially. And this system allows us to not only create brands quickly, but also repurpose some of the, like if we do create as a team a system to tackle restaurants or musicians or different things like that. Because you said 90% of brands are similar. What is that 10% that's different?
So like kind of like human DNA. You know how like technically we share majority of our DNA. It was like 98% or something like that. Fact check me. But let's just say the majority of your DNA is very much similar. There's a small piece of that differentiates us, whether it's like the values, or we call it like brand DNA, essentially, right? And then so what we focus on like right now is that we spend, instead of like trying to reinvent the wheel every single time from head to toe, like create a new human every single time, we focus on that differentiator and figure out, okay, how do we position this person to be unique, to be valuable, to be of service, and to communicate clearly. And then from there, we essentially have all the ingredients that we need to execute on the recipe of what creates a good brand experience for these different platforms. Like how do we take those ingredients and then distribute it well?
So you create, you find that 10% brand DNA, you take that, you extract it, you turn that into what that DNA basically gets their positioning and what they should feel like and look like and sound like. And then eventually you create all the assets and everything that goes into it.
Once we have that, like, then it gets easy. Then the automation gets really easy, right? Oftentimes, like the toughest part when you start to first interact with the designer is just making sure that you have alignment and like they know what you're trying to do. And like even who you are and who you want to be.
Super interesting. Well, I think we have a few segments planned for the future of the show, but for today, I think we wanted to do a small short interview with you. Next week, we'll probably talk about me, unfortunately.
I can't wait, man. I got so many questions.
It's going to be fun. And then, next, I think, so we're talking about brand positioning and how brands can differentiate each other based on their DNA. And I think our next segment is perfect to tangent into it. So,
love it,
Brand Royale coming up. All right, everybody, Brand Royale. This is where we basically dissect two opposite brands that are trying to tackle similar problems or similar market. Oh, man. A total accident, guys. But yeah, Tesla versus Lucid. Obviously, we know those are two very different companies trying to tackle very different similar problems, but differently, right? Tesla heavily focused on performance and technology, I would say.
Yep.
And Lucid very more focused on luxury and lifestyle. I think they're trying to sell you this idea that with their cars, you can live a more fulfilled, relaxed life.
With your fancy watch,
exactly,
and your nice leather briefcase.
And all these good things. So it's obviously a pretty crazy industry, especially now with the EV market is heating up quite a bit. But we can see that Lucid is holding an interesting territory where Tesla is starting to compete with companies like Polestar and Porsche and all these guys in that area. And then we have people like Rivian, for example, building trucks for a specific lifestyle. They're just selling you on like this outdoors life with your electric vehicle, very specific. And Volkswagen a bit the same with their Volkswagen Bus electric that they're trying to make.
When we say Volkswagen, are we talking parent? So does that include like...
no, because I separated Porsche. So I would say Volkswagen themselves are making a lot of electric vehicles. I think the other companies within the Volkswagen
Golf
umbrella
and stuff like that. I almost got the Golf E.
The Golf E, but Volkswagen is after Tesla the biggest producer of electric vehicles. So it's as a conglomerate. Today we basically want to see and explain and talk over why Lucid and Tesla have very different brands and brand identity and tone of voice and all these good things. And we're going to be able to hopefully walk through a little bit why we think this is and kind of what differentiates these two different car makers.
Let's do it. I'm ready. I'm excited.
All right. Lucid versus Tesla. Let's start looking at their brand and analyze this a little bit.
So this is a tricky one for me because I love Tesla as a brand story. But sometimes I wouldn't necessarily say that that was my vibe. It's almost too techie looking. I drive a Tesla though, so it's like I bought into the story. But the Lucid, in a way, aesthetically, I'm really into walnut, the dark black, the more aesthetically that does fit my brand a bit better. But I can see how Tesla kind of hits their market. If you're trying to be a new EV company and performance is a concern of people switching over, they definitely say, hey, we're coming in with pure power.
And that's what for me. And we're going to take a look at their website and a little bit of their digital presence and some of their products as well. And this is where the stories really differentiate each other. Obviously, Tesla is David versus Goliath here. Tesla has been around for a while. They have huge backing, huge market cap, tons of money and resources to build the vehicles they're building. But in terms of the brand, it's true that their brand is very very techy and very cold a little bit, and I think robotic. And coming from Elon Musk and some of the things that we know about him, it makes sense, I think, for them. And I think going for that, I think at the time, especially when they came out, being able to target those early consumers, right, and being able to go after techies because they knew that's what the target audience was. Remove all the interior buttons with giant screens, and so it made a lot of sense. And I think their brand is still living that life. I wonder when they're going to think about potentially upgrading their brand. Whereas Lucid, newcomer from California, inspired by California and nature, and they really want to push this idea of sustainable electricity and luxury. And so they're really pushing for these natural sustainable materials and these beautiful earth tones and these serif fonts and all these things. And so I think when you start looking at for example, their digital presence, we'll dive into their websites a little bit, but that becomes pretty clear, right? So for example, we look at...
Quick question. Is Lucid... Do they have a backing? Are they?
Yeah, so they're backed by a Saudi Arabian investment fund, and they also
that's their market for sure.
They also IPO'd, so they got quite a bit of market cap out of it, and they got a lot of money out of it. So they've been doing okay, even though I think they've only delivered a handful of vehicles. So that's the whole new tech life, right?
And then it was also it was only friends and family.
It was 20 close personal beta testers basically, I would say. And then I think after that now they're opening up the production line and they're trying to deliver more on their fulfillment because they have a lot of reservations. But you can see, I think one thing about Tesla is that they're being super smart about what they want you to do when it comes to their digital presence and their website. It's basically come here and shop.
Yeah, it's a beautiful squeeze page. They know exactly what funnel that they're going to put you under.
That's it.
Yeah, what product do you want? Cool, buy it. You don't need to know about me. You don't need to know about Elon Musk. You probably already do. we know that you're here to consider purchasing a vehicle probably, or getting those solar walls.
Beautiful site though.
It's clean. Like it kind of reminds you of like, you know, Apple-ish in a way.
I agree.
Like, even the way they like talk about their statistics and stuff like that, it's just incredibly clean. If like Apple were to enter the car industry, you know, they would do something along those lines, which was why I was kind of sad when Apple never did purchase Tesla. I thought that might happen.
I think they'll build their own.
yeah.
I think they'll be okay building their own. So let's just do a quick side by side with Lucid here.
For sure.
So if all of a sudden the tone changes and it feels a bit more business, a bit more serious, but still like very luxurious. So we're starting with this like beautiful maroon color car, like driving around these California roads, and a bit more, I would say. Yeah, away from the tech and a bit more mature and a bit more like almost serious a little bit.
Well, their type choice is like a good like indicator of what they care about, because like it's a little bit harder to read, but it has an elegance of it that you can appreciate too. So it's less functional, but you know, experience wise, there's this even that nice scroll effect with the text coming through.
The parallax here is really nice.
It's the subtle things,
and that's luxury, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you look at some of the big brands, like whether you Louis Vuitton and stuff, it's all about the details, and I think that's what they do really well. Like all these little interactions. Their configurator is one of the best in the game, with the 3D full on 3D configurator. It's really beautiful. Obviously, they have their background here, San Francisco, but
that's cool. They have the background in there.
Yeah, and you can change the background, so I can put it at the beach and take a look at what my imaginary car would look like at the beach, for example. Pretty beautiful. It's a really good way to like buy into a product that you're not going to look at, right? Or you're not going to own.
It is cool, but like I think like if we were to look at this just from a pure efficiency standpoint, if you wanted to get people through that checkout process as fast as possible,
I mean, Tesla owns it, right?
Tesla wins for sure. Like you know where to click, you know what the next step is, you know what your options are, you know, and you get it done. You're not getting distracted by anything.
So this is where it's like story over efficiency, I think, because Tesla is already established. People know their story and they know what they stand for. So they go there and they know what they need to do.
Yeah.
Whereas Lucid being a new company, they need to be able to sell you that story. They need to be able to sell you into who they are. What do you buy into when you buy this? Because you're like buying into a personality basically. And so what personality do you fit in? And I think they do a really good job at that, because when you look at the way they build their brand, so this was done by their agency, Tolleson. They have a small article about how they designed their brand, but really they really lean into this lifestyle idea of this is not tech. We're taking a futuristic approach that's very different from Tesla's, and we try to stand out. And I think there's a lot of beauty that's been done and a lot of refinement that's been done that I don't think Tesla has yet in their branding. So looking at even the letter form and the way it goes from thick to thin, just like in car design, all of these little things.
I do like their logo better, I would have to say.
Yeah. It's pretty well done. Even the Air logo is quite dynamic. Describes their car pretty well, actually, once you start breaking down the lines. We'll get into the product very soon.
I would say that they don't have a mark. So they only have the logo type.
It's only the L.
The L to me is a little like
it's not as iconic.
That's not iconic at all. You're not going to recognize that L anywhere.
The Tesla toothpick or whatever you want to call it, looks a lot better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more iconic.
You know, it's the Tesla coil.
Yeah, the Tesla coil.
Yeah, but that's even a stretch for me, because it's like a piece of it and stuff like that. It's like me taking a piece of a toothbrush and being like, oh, the Brussels represent.
And it doesn't work with the other mark that they have. They're like very different. The icon is quite different from their actual word mark. So that's also another thing that we noticed. Let's take a look at for example, how do they like present themselves online? We look at, for example, Facebook, Tesla. That's not on Facebook, by the way, because Elon Musk hates Facebook, so he pulled everything out of Facebook. But they're on Instagram.
How is Lucid active on Facebook?
Yes, Lucid is out there, and Lucid is super consistent.
This must be pretty low engagement, though, right? Like Facebook, how much?
Yeah, 510 shares.
95,000 people.
Yeah, 95,000 people here. It's not bad.
Okay, not bad.
But then you look at, obviously, Lucid Motors newer. They don't have the cult following, I would say, that Tesla does. But I think that's one of the conversations we'll probably get into about their CEO and what the power of a CEO has for a brand. And I think Elon Musk holds a lot of power. So when you go to Tesla, you can tell a lot of the 9 point something million, 13 million followers on Twitter, they have a huge cult following. They build that through hype, and I think that's a bit of the difference with a company like Lucid. Eventually, hopefully, that's what they'll get into, making, maybe spending less money on their marketing and being able to.
Sure.
You're a newcomer in the market, you have to spend a lot of money on marketing. Tesla managed to get to where they are, $0 on marketing, and all they did was invest in R&D. And
wait, do we know that for sure? How much money does
I think we
Lucid
did some
spend
research.
on
Yeah,
marketing?
we did some research, and I think
I
until recently,
could see that though. I could see Elon Musk being like, that logo's great. Like, let's keep moving. Like, we have to hit these deadlines. And Lucid being more like, oh, let's engage the best agencies. Let's have a design review process.
And marketing too. Like, they don't spend money on ads and stuff. What they do is they throw events like keynotes, like Apple, and they present new products, and they unveil a Cybertruck, and they unveil like a electric sports coupe, and then people just talk about it. People go crazy.
ATV.
Yeah, you get an ATV, and all of a sudden people are like, okay, you make a flamethrower for a Boeing company, and all of a sudden, like, there's all these things that I connect back to this Tesla environment and ecosystem.
Do you think it's better to kind of like, so with Tesla, right, or even Lucid, Lucid talked about their vehicle how many years before? Like a long time before.
2012, I think, is when they first talked about it, but that was a different company. That was a different company. It was a different company at the time.
But same founder?
No, because the new CEO and stuff are different.
CEO,
so I think they kind of like got bought off and like rechanged a bit their branding, and they rebranded and then they reattacked. Yeah.
But like, we've been looking at that Lucid vehicle for a while, right? And then like even like Cybertruck, Roadster, and stuff like that. Do you think it's better to kind of tease products out like that in the automotive space, or like hold back? Like Apple's like whole thing is like, we don't show you anything until like launch day, and you get super excited about launch
I think
day.
Tesla does it so they can get money in the bank.
Reservations, they have to.
They just get reservations. They raise the hype and their valuation in a way, and then they can invest in more stuff. I mean, that's what they delayed. They've delayed pretty much every
otherwise
single car.
You can't pay for the factories.
Every car they've pre-sold, they've delayed. So
yeah.
And Lucid is on that train too. They sold their car before they had it, and now they're basically trying to fill up orders and stuff. But let's
let's keep it going.
Let's look at the actual product design, because brands are not just digital. They're not just word marks and colors. They're how you translate the vibe and the identity that you have in your website, in your brand, in your type, and this needs to be translated into physical products. And this is what Lucid and Tesla do, because their main offering to public is a product. And so let's take a look at how this translates into it. Right away, you can look at the difference of the Tesla and the Lucid. It feels like one of them is selling you a Stormtrooper performance car. The other one is selling you a nice, like, hey, sit by my mid-century modern house in Palm Springs and come and relax and just hang out in this lounge. What do you think? What's your feeling on this?
Let's talk about whiskey flavors. No, you know, there's I would say, for me, it's exactly that. To be honest with you, the Model S has never been like aesthetically one of my favorite cars. It has like even the tail end for me is a little bit off. I don't mind the front of it as much, but even for me, like, I actually like the Model 3 look.
It feels less heavy, I think. It's just smaller of a car.
It has more like, you know, Porsche characteristics, especially with the grille and stuff like that. I don't know what that slit is like necessary for.
That's a performance package, I think.
But like the interior, like if I had to, like how different having like the spoke wheel and those different elements kind of get me excited. But at the same time, if I'm just thinking about like, oh, as a designer, like pure aesthetics, like what do I gravitate towards? I actually prefer the left.
For me, which one tells the story the best? If we're talking about like they build a brand story and they're trying to get that story to be conveyed through a product, I do think, aside from the interior, so let's look at the exterior first. I think the exterior of the Lucid definitely sells you more of that dream, that lounger, touring, luxury vehicle. Tesla is pushing performance. Obviously, you have Ludacris and Plaid and like all that stuff, right? And so they go crazy on performance, and you can see it even in the steering wheel. It's becoming like almost like a Formula One steering wheel, and everything is disappearing. So they're doing a lot more of that, and I think we did pick a color and trim here that's a little bit more.
I was like, we could have chose like a same
it could have been a bit more, but these are the ones that
that
Tesla are pushing hardcore on, right? That's what they're trying to sell you. On their website, they're selling you this right away.
It feels different. It feels different. Like left, you could see that coming out of VW. Like realistically, if VW came out and it was like, hey,
there's a lot of ex-VW designers too.
Oh, okay, there you go. You'd be like, oh yeah, I could see that coming out of like a big automotive because it's got like that refinement to it.
I think 3 or 4 of their main designers came at some point from VW. So Yeah, no, I think also the Model S is a lot older, so there's a lot more time to refine and design this new Lucid. But there's few things that I think work, and for those of you that are looking for key things to look at when you're looking at designs like this idea of like when you're looking at a luxury vehicle, the idea of presence, like how much room you take on the road, how big your car looks, how imposing does it look?
Yeah.
That's huge. And I think like using these really thin horizontal lines across the car makes the car look long and wide.
Yeah.
And so you look at the front end of this Lucid and you see this long bar that goes across your eyes, like, oh man, this car looks super wide. And then when you look at it from side view, this headlight cuts into the side body line into the tail light. And so it creates this whole loop around the car. And then you have this floating canopy roof that sits over like this giant cabin. So the cabin on this car is actually much bigger than the Teslas. They have like the front windshield is actually further forward. And so it looks less like a traditional car. It's got a really short nose. So it gives you a lot of room on the inside. That's what they sell. They sell like, you're inside this luxury vessel. Their idea was like a private jet almost. And so
like the back seat is like where you want to be almost.
Yeah, exactly. The back seat on the original one like leans back. I think on the Air Touring, they fold back almost like Mercedes too. You can like lean back and like.
Oh yeah, I've seen some of those videos.
So pretty cool. All right.
I remember it like initially Lucid had different looking back seats though, right?
Slightly, they were way more conceptual.
They were way more conceptual. Yeah. They looked like floating.
They look like bucket seats and stuff. Yeah,
because this looks pretty conventional to me. Yeah.
But even I think one thing Lucid does well, and if you look on their website, is the color and trim. So the CMF is like
that is clean.
They pick really well refined colors, really well refined palettes, materials.
Even the shape of the headrest and stuff like that has a certain elegance and like weight and base to it.
Yeah, and I think they drove that all the way down to the small details, and I think that's why this car became pretty successful. It's a pretty simple car and designed for the industry.
What do you think about those iPhone rims?
The iPhone rims. Oh.
Yeah. Am I giving you PTSD from the Bugatti rims?
Oh, the Bugatti rims are an iPhone. No, it's not that bad. This one doesn't bother me too much. It has motion. I think when it's moving, it's like it looks like it's moving even though it's still. Let's look at the last small piece that we wanted to look at for these guys.
Oh man, dude, that's rough.
Another physical presence.
You can't do that to Tesla.
I mean, dude, I googled Tesla showrooms and stores, and honestly, all the images were pretty much this, and those are some of the better ones. Okay. But I think this drives the point even more, even though it's pretty drastic. It drives the point even more that Lucid is selling you this lifestyle. You're going to not a mall to buy a car or to a dealership, and you're going to these showrooms where you can sit down and it almost looks like they're going to give you a cigar and some whiskey, and you can like kind of buy your Lucid, and like you have they hired architecture firms to help them design the interior of their things with all these natural woods and natural colors. So they're really like, one thing I appreciate about what they've done in that effort as they hit the market is that they were very consistent across their brand identity, from the visual, from the logo, from the colors, from the typography, to their website, to their. You can go through the whole Lucid experience, and I feel like you feel like in the same home. And Tesla, I think, is going to get there probably. Their stores were very successful. They disrupted how cars were being sold all around the world.
They're not pretty though.
By putting cars in malls. But they were all about function. They were like, hey, come touch our shirts and all our color palettes and all our wheels. And like they put everything in the showroom. And they were just like, so it is a bit of different language, but I think it's interesting to see the two. And I know these are maybe rough images for Tesla, but I couldn't really find better ones.
It's interesting for that. Like when I picked up my car, it wasn't even a showroom. It was just literally a garage. And then so like their budgets must be so slim on these these retail experiences or dealerships.
I mean, you're buying space in malls, so nowadays like that's probably the cheapest retail space you can get, right?
Super cheap. And like if you look at what's in, like if you told me, Sho, you had to set up the left side, I'd be like, okay, give me $2 million. If you told me to set up the right side and you're going to provide the vehicle, I mean, what, $200,000 setup right there?
Yeah. Except for the big stuff,
yeah, like paint the walls, like get that screen in there. But that is the cheapest setup that you can imagine.
So they're really investing. I think Lucid is really investing in the image because they don't have the rest of the clout that comes with being Tesla, right? Like, you have to overspend to be able to like beat them at that game.
This is a marketing ploy or marketing move for them.
Sure.
The retail shop for Tesla is less of a marketing move. They already know they have diehard fans coming in.
In the past couple of years, Lucid has built over like 40 showrooms and like...
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. It's
pretty crazy.
Honestly, that's my aesthetic, the black and the wood.
It's beautiful. I mean, they're definitely selling
If you ever want to buy me furniture, like give me a little walnut and some black.
All right, dude, to close it off, in 2 years, if you could own either one, I know you already have a Tesla Model 3, but let's go. Would you go Model S? Would you go... let's buy into the brand. Tesla or Lucid?
Yeah.
What do you think? What are your pros and cons?
Okay, from like the design, the visual identity perspective, like it's hard for like
Yeah.
I actually like Lucid better. But I also like, I probably aspire to be more of like the Lucid target audience.
So aspiration is...
It's kind of like aspirational.
Interesting.
But that being said, like I would always go with the Tesla just because of their software and I'd rather be more innovative than like refined, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
I'm willing to make I'm willing to sacrifice and go with.
Isn't that funny? I feel like they're two different, almost like the lifestyle they're selling, the pace of life. It's
Yeah.
like Lucid is like, hey, you made it, slow
You're
down.
steady, yeah.
You made it, slow down, enjoy the ride. Whereas
Yeah.
Tesla is like,
Have a
yo,
cigar.
you made
Yeah.
it, let's punch the gas and get to my office really quickly so I can get more work done and make more money, right?
Yeah. Let's get to Mars. Like it's not enough. Like I don't
exactly.
want to go fast. I want to go ludicrous. No, I don't want to go ludicrous anymore. I want to go. What is it like the next? Yeah. Ludicrous plus, and then.
Well, I think this is a fun little format. I think we can do more of these in the
Yeah,
future. We already
yeah.
have ideas of other things we can do. But hey, we'd love to hear your opinion. Are you a Lucid or Tesla fan? Tell us why. And let us know what other brands we'd like to, we could review on this show. Let us know. We're open for suggestions. So yeah, this is the first episode of The Art of Branding. Not bad.
I enjoyed it,
fun.
man. It was good.
Yeah,
it was
a good time.
good. Yeah. I can't wait to do the next one.
Yeah. And then,
what brands should we do next week? You'll never know.
oh my God, I don't know.
We could do
There's gonna be,
software. We could do industries. We could do HubSpot versus Salesforce.
Ooh, oh, you want to go into
versus-
CRMs and stuff? Oh my God.
I don't know.
That might be a bit boring. I don't know.
Apple
Anyway,
versus Intel, M1
yeah.
versus Intel. There's a lot of really cool brands out there. Let us know. Yeah.
So we'll get to it. But hey, thank you everybody. Thanks for everyone that's helped us put this show together over the past few weeks. It's been a crazy kind of undertaking trying to get this going. So
yeah.
thanks everybody for the support, and we'll be back next week.